that was one of my healing mechanisms. So does this so far resonate with anybody? Yes. Finding humor? Yes. And have there been times in your life where you look back and say, you know what? I was stressed out to the max. I did not see any humor in it. Mm-hmm. And then now, maybe 5 years, 10 years later, you can find humor in it. Mm-hmm. But you can't hurt yourself or harm yourself or criticize yourself. That's the word. Criticize yourself for not finding humor soon enough. You'll find it when you need to. Mm-hmm. When you need to. I went through an IRS audit last year. That was fun. Yes, exactly. It was. Now I can say this and broadcast it because I got money back. I said a lot of expletives over the course of 15 months. So if you were to press play in our house, you probably hear a lot of stuff. But I didn't find humor in that. It was very stressful. I had a case manager who didn't know what PayPal was. He didn't know what networking meetings were. He didn't, all of that. So I was not happy, I was not humorous, and then I also had to fire the accountant. And this is where I knew I was going to be okay, because I called my friend Lisa Olson, and I said, it's going to be okay. I kind of feel like I'm leaving an ex-boyfriend's house and I'm picking up all my records. So then I know it was going to be okay. It was going to be okay. So, and it is okay. I don't owe $15,000. I don't owe $25,000. I got $179.69 back. Yes, that's what I heard. They're probably going to have me submit a 1099 for that. They did that one. So does this make sense? And in the middle of some situations, stressful, grief, loss of a job, changes, any kind of changes can evoke some kind of grief or loss because it's not what it was before. I also, in addition to having trained at Second City, I was a volunteer grief counselor for Heartlight, which is a bereavement support group for children and their families, ages 8 to 18. It was affiliated with the Children's Memorial Hospital, which is now Lurie's Hospital. And what I thought fascinating was the rules of improvisation correlated perfectly with the rules of working with kids who experience the death of a parent. Rules of improvisation, yes and, being in the present moment, give and take, and within those 3 rules is included no judgment. No judgment. Now I'm going to give a demonstration, if you don't mind, yes. Mallory. Yes. Now a demonstration of not accepting what is happening. Now when I'm going to give these demonstrations, and we might have time even for exercises, I do want you to think, okay, yes, this is fun, but I also want you to think, where could this be applied somewhere else? This is, the applied improvisation theory here. So if I am working with the child, for example, and this is what we're supposed to do. Reflexive, excuse me, I'm going to back up a little bit. You can edit this out. Thanks, Harold. Thanks so much to our tech support here, Harold. Thanks. I'm going to recap in our little recap, and we'll talk offline about that, right? Meetings. Love corporate speak. Please use English. Anyway, little side note. So one of the rules of improvisation is to give and take and don't judge. So we had a sandbox, we had a Thunderdome for the kids, we had a place where they could just play. And yes and also means reflective listening. Now, and I would respond in a similar tone, I will get back to you, a similar tone as the child did. So let's say, Johnny, 3 years old, his father died. He's playing in the sandcastle and he says, I'm gonna build a sandcastle to my dad. He's in heaven. Now, what I'm supposed to do, which I did, was you're in the same tone, you're going to build a sandcastle so you can see your dad. Now what I'm doing is creating an environment for him that tells him what he is saying, what he is thinking, how he is processing his grief is okay. Now, what could have just made him trip like crazy or pull the rug out from under him is if I were to say, you can't do that, that's impossible, Johnny. You can't do that. And how many times in our conversations, whether we're at work or we're on a team, in a family, whatever it is, and if you share an idea and someone negates it, it's almost like they're doing a Tanya Harding on you. Okay, anybody not? Okay. Should have checked the number of praise. One week I spoke at Harper College near Chicago, 19-year-olds. Day's look. Next week, Barrington Rotary. Got it. Know your audience. Next for the next topic. But so when you're, and this goes for when you're communicating with somebody. If you're a therapist, how many in the room are therapists and work with people who are dealing with challenging issues and grief? Now, as a therapist, you can't say, well, you're just going to get over it. You have to work through it. I'm not a therapist, so I'm not going to tell you how.
Stop it.
Stop it. Stop it. Get over it. That was 20 years ago. That works, doesn't it? That was sarcasm. That was sarcasm. So, but in talking with people, listening to people, it's best to hear what they have to say and without judging them, without judging. And you can also take this inward. Because how many times have you thought, you know, I should be doing this, or I should be over this person, I should be over this loss, I should. It's very possible if we listen to where we are, where our emotions are, where our grief is, then we're giving ourselves that permission to yes and that moment. So don't be so hard on yourself. I have to tell myself that. So was that fun so far? Fun? Is that fun so far? You know, when I gave some presentations for staff at a library, I said, don't worry, I'm not going to be talking about death. And I'm going to move that eventually. I will. I said, I'm not going to be talking about death. And within 5 minutes, I gave the story about my dad, my mom, and then I talked about grief counselors. And I said, well, you know what, I can't commit that. So, but where is that connection into life and stress? It's allowing yourself to be in that moment. Allow yourself to be in the moment. And I was talking to a friend who recently had a loss, and she had said, I think I'm just going to try to be as happy as possible. And I told her, if you need to just cry, if that's what you need to do, then you should do that. Because if you know you have to cry, you have to scream, you have to yell, and you push it down, that's not healthy for your recovery or your healing. So where you are in that moment, allow yourself, your emotions to be in that moment and embrace those. And just like when I worked with those kids who had a parent die, we didn't tell them they were supposed to be over the loss of their mom or dad 3 months. They had teachers telling them that. It's been 3 months. You should be over it. And that's why we have programs like, Heartlight. And that's why we have people in this room at this conference who are supporting people in a healthy way. And that's why positive psychology, looking at things from a positive perspective and how we can heal, not how broken you are. And applied improvisation is also an organization that's just as beneficial as this. I would like to see all of them integrated, which would be kind of cool, because they all overlap. The improvisation, being in the moment, the humor, whether it seems not so healthy at the time, but it does help us get through. Yes. Any questions so far?